So welcome to Civic Learning with Civic Action Project. If that was the webinar you thought you were attending, you're in the right place. Just want to quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Laura Wesley. I'm Director of Programs here at the Constitutional Rights Foundation. And with me today is
Gregorio Medina, Senior Program Director, Constitutional Rights Foundation.
I'm Sarah Badawi. I'm also a Senior Program Director at Constitutional Rights Foundation. I was a middle and high school social studies and special ed teacher for 15 years before joining CRF.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So just moving on, for those of you who are not that familiar with the Constitutional Rights Foundation, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. That nonpartisan piece is super important to us and to what we do. And that's why teachers across the nation trust us and trust our materials to be in their classrooms. So our main goal is to educate young people to become active and informed and engaged members of our democracy. And how we do that is through programming. We do the Mark Trial program here locally in California where we're based, but we also have a national presence, and Civic Action Project is one of our national programs that we do. We also have a fabulous curricular magazine that goes out 4 times a year to teachers, over 30,000 teachers across the nation. And it always has a ready-to-use lesson on U.S. history, world history, and then a government or current event. I will put that in the chat for everyone. If you're interested, please feel free to subscribe. Again, it's free. And then we have a great archives. So we've been doing this now for over 25 years, and so we have a great archive. So pretty much anything you're teaching, most likely whatever topic, will have a lesson on it, free, ready to use. All right, next slide. I think I'm going to go over today's goals real quick. We're going to give you, as I mentioned in the beginning, an overview of Civic Action Project. We'll talk about how it supports best practices in civic education. We'll show you an example of a student work, quickly go over the website so you can see where everything is. We'll show you how CAP supports, if you happen to have a civic seal or other engagement project, a civic engagement project, we can show you how CAP might be able to meet that. At the end, hopefully, if we have time, we can talk about pacing and then next steps. So I'd like this point to turn it over to Gregorio.
Thank you, Laura. So to answer that question, what is Civic Action Project? We've always referred to it as a practicum for teaching U.S. government. It really translates classroom content into relevant civic engagement for the students about things they really care about. It's web-based, so it's easily accessible, standards aligned, so it's suitable to be used in the classroom for classroom instruction. Student-driven, this is really important because this is where the buy-in occurs. Students get to decide what is the problem, issue, or need that they're going to investigate. And policy focus, extremely critical. This is the common thread that unites the entire CAP experience. This is really what we tell students where sustainable change occurs. And through the CAP experience, they're essentially self-qualifying themselves to consult with and even advise some of the decision makers in their community about some of the things that are important to them and how they feel would be the most effective way to address them. Because the 3 elements of CAP, and I always tell teachers, these are the 3 essential elements of every CAP project or CAP experience: problem, issue, or need, plus the policy connection and the civic actions to gain a deeper understanding of why the problem occurs, why it's important to address, and some policy-based strategies for doing so.
So hopefully, even with just that little quick snapshot of some of the key elements of CAP, will help sort of show, and we're going to go into a lot more depth through the presentation, the sort of all the ways that CAP reflects best practices and really research-based evidence of what works well in social studies and civic education, going as far back as the 2011 proven practices for effective civic learning. There are 6 of them total, but these top 3 that you see on the left-hand column there are sort of the ways that CAP really does these proven practices for encouraging civic learning in kids. And then there's the inquiry arc, which you may have heard of from the C3 framework from 2013. And basically, the inquiry arc really focuses on sort of the combination of concepts and tools that kids are going to need to thrive in academic, college, and career and civic life. And so with a real emphasis on inquiry and practical applications, which is definitely something that they get in CAP. More recently, you may have heard about the Roadmap to Educating for American Democracy, which came out last year. And it addresses a number of themes in civic education. One of which obviously is civic participation. And the roadmap really kind of tries to weave together in a new way civics and history content areas to make them engaging and help prepare kids to be engaged citizens in our democracy. So by looking at both of those areas, kids will do that through CAP as well.
Thank you, Sarah. And now that you've seen a little of the rationale of how CAP or why it was designed, it's really important at the beginning of the CAP process to demystify this concept of civic action. What do we mean by civic action? Very simply, it's all of the things that average citizens do to address important problems and issues in their community. The first thing would be simply identifying a matter of concern. That would be the first civic action. The next very important step is becoming informed, researching the history of the problem or issue in their community. What are some of its causes, effects? What has worked? What hasn't worked? What might be the next step? Communicating with peers and community partners, networking, and becoming and connecting with some of the players in their community. And once again, really important, engaging with policy and the policymakers, because this is going to be the key to sustainable change. We don't expect students to solve something like climate change in one semester, but at the end of this experience, they will be the experts on why that issue is important and maybe take the effort one step further in the right direction and maybe pass it on to the next group of students who might decide to address that same issue. And this is essentially what a CAP project, this is what civic actions are. And I think next we're going to give you an example. Laura's going to show you an example of what a CAP project actually looks like.
Yeah, so what better way to show you what Civic Action Project is by actually seeing a real student project. I think sometimes teachers think, oh no, my student would never be able to do something like this. But we actually have students from all different grade levels and abilities who actually participate in CAP, from English language learners to AP students. So right here, I'm going to show you an example of a student project. And I would introduce this the same way I do when we work with students, which is when you watch this video, I want you to be able to see if you can identify what the issue is that the student was working on, right? What civic actions they took. So what were some of the things that you saw them do? And then how do they connect their issue to policy?
Hello, my name is Sochi Tenorio. My group members include Marina, Karen, and Joseph. Our topic is racing and speeding in Anaheim. We believe this is a huge problem in Anaheim because it causes many deaths and injuries every single day. So we began with our project with a survey to all the students and teachers as well, and we got a lot of feedback from that. And next up is a video of personal opinion from one of our staff. After asking several people of their opinion on the survey and in person, we have decided that we should go into higher authority. So we decided to step it up and go to the Anaheim Police Department and get more information on what they have been doing and what could be in the progress of stopping this problem. So here is a clip of that interview.
Receive like car accidents and like racing reports and stuff like that.
Every day simply after hours, like when knuckleheads from high school get off around anytime from say 10 to around midnight or 10 to 1, they call it forward, which is huge racing streets. They race a lot there. Whenever they meet up, it's anywhere from, I'm not exaggerating, 50 to 150 cars. Yeah, it's huge.
Are there any like city council meetings for any of this?
Yes, well, listen, Anaheim has city, specifically not for that, but you would definitely have the right, and we promote, we would love it if you as a citizen of Anaheim go and to our city council meetings on Tuesdays and actually talk about it.
After having an interview with the police department, it actually helped us a lot on why, how, where, when. So we decided to look up more questions, and we got these these facts from NBC Los Angeles, ABC7, and OC Register. And we also went on to ots.ca.gov, which gave us a lot of facts about our city, that there were more than 3,000 injuries and deaths in just Anaheim alone, and about 900 of those were caused by speeding. So obviously we can tell that this is a huge problem and it causes many deaths and injuries. On curbed.com, Pulse Protects, it also stated a lot of ways to prevent and ways to help whenever you see this. Our action plan began with handing out flyers to our students and teachers to be aware of this problem. Here is a picture of us taking action and giving out those flyers. We then knew that handing out the flyers wasn't going to be enough, so we stepped it up even more from the interview, and we decided to go speak at the city council meeting on Tuesday, April 10th at 5:30 p.m. because we believe that this should be taken not to our school only, but to the city council as well. Good afternoon. My name is Sochi Tenorio, and I am a senior at Loera High School. Today I would like to bring the attention to speeding here in Anaheim City. This topic is a big problem that we have as a city, and we need to put an end to it. Last year we had a total of 3,268 victims killed and injured. 932 of those were caused by speeding. I live on Westball Road, and I am constantly seeing several car accidents due to racing and speeding. So everyone please help each other and help in general in whichever way you possibly can, and I hope we can find a solution to put this to an end together as a community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'm so sorry for your loss, and thank you for trying to prevent future loss. We have our acting chief, Julian Harvey, standing in the back. I'm going to ask he speak with you in the lobby afterwards, and maybe specific areas or concerns or ideas that you have. Please let Chief Harvey know. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Xochitl, also item number 6 this evening is actually a report from staff on a proposed neighborhood traffic safety program around our schools and our parks, specifically speaking to what you're talking about. So definitely stick around for that item if you can.
After speaking to the city council members to represent me, my group, and Loera in general, we decided to actually speak with the police officer that they had told me to, and he told me that this actually helped a lot, and I brought this to the city's attention, and our group did very well for bringing the subject up, and we actually helped him by giving him like places where, when, around what time it happened. Lastly, our final action is to bring it more into play and present it at the Youth and Government Day, because they give you an opportunity to speak about the problem that you believe is the worst here in Anaheim. So we will be updating that with Mr. Walker as soon as we possibly can. Thank you for your attention.
What was the issue that you saw this young person work on? What was the issue or the problem that they were trying to address? You can put it into the chat. Thanks, Michelle. Michelle said speeding and racing. Thanks, Richard. Drag racing. Yep, traffic deaths from speeding. Right. So illegal drag racing was an issue that she really was passionate about. She ended up losing someone in her neighborhood due to it. So it was something that was super personal to her. What were some of the civic actions you saw her take? There's a ton of different actions, but what were some of the things you saw her doing? Right. So you said building awareness. How did they build awareness? Right. There was a Google poll, there was interviews, there were flyers. She spoke out at a public meeting, right? Talked to the police department, doing things like research, surveys, etc. Great, good job. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed, not only did she speak at city council, but she also got to speak to the acting chief police, which is super, super important that she was able to get that kind of access just by being there. What about policy? What kind of connection to policy did you see?
Maybe another way to put it is like, what were they asking for? Like, were they trying to
were they trying to create a policy, enforce a policy, modify a policy, leverage a policy? Yeah, Sarah, that's a good point. What were they asking for? When she was at the city council meeting, what was she asking for? Well, it might have been a little, she did speak softly, but really she was trying to get them to enforce an existing policy that they had in place. That's right, awareness. Thank you, Michelle. Regulations, maybe having more officers around at the scene, enforcing speeding laws. Nice, thank you. So yeah, so that basically is Civic Action Project in a nutshell, is where a student was able to pick an issue that they cared about. They were able to take different civic actions to try to impact that particular issue, and they connected that issue to policy to make some sort of sustaining change. So now that you see the end product, Gregorio is going to show you the website to show you how they got there.
Well, they did it with a lot of help with the really great teacher coach at Loera, Mr. Walker, a really great teacher who's very invested in helping his students become more civically engaged. So that was the CAP website. If you saw at the upper right-hand corner is where you would log in or register to get your own username and password. And then you'll land right here on the CAP dashboard. This is the dashboard where you'll find all of the essential CAP resources. For the purposes of today's workshop, we're going to focus on the conventional or traditional CAP and some of the essential resources to deliver that sequence of activities and lessons for students. So as you see here, this is the CAP curriculum, 15 lessons, 5 of which are the core lessons. The balance of the lessons can be taught at your discretion or according to student interest or need. We're going to look at the very first lesson, a different kind of government course. This is the typical format of every CAP lesson. You'll have an overview, standards addressed, including the civic mission of schools' proven practices from the Guardian of Democracy report that Sarah mentioned earlier, a list of objectives, a list of all the materials you'll need to successfully deliver the lesson, and finally, step-by-step instructions to deliver the lesson in the classroom. On the left-hand column, if you want to take a deeper dive in whatever topic is being focused on in that particular lesson, we have additional readings that you can assign to students or even incorporate them to the classroom to supplement what the students have been exploring in that particular CAP session. We also have a video of the CAP lesson being delivered in a classroom. So that's a different kind of government course. In this lesson, the students brainstorm what are the characteristics and traits of an effective citizen using the categories of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and action. And what's really great is the result is a profile of citizenship that is a direct reflection of what they think is important to get things done in their community. And it's something that the students can refer to and add to throughout the rest of their CAP experience. In the next lesson, it's called Introduction to Public Policy, same exact format, standards, materials, step-by-step instructions, a supplemental resource on the left-hand column. And in this lesson, students do browse through news media sources and look for examples of problems, issues, and needs being addressed through public policy. And what is the level of government involved in that particular scenario or case example that they chose. Lesson 3 is a critical lesson. This is where students learn how to narrow the focus of their CAP project from a broad issue like homelessness to maybe a primary root cause, such as lack of mental health services. So now they have a real concrete focus on where to apply their civic actions and their research, and usually someone in the local area who they can engage, a policymaker already directly involved or responsible for addressing that issue. Next lesson focuses on case studies that we've taken from news sources throughout the country. You can see the examples right here, reopening schools during COVID, Mississippi voter ID laws, more street lights needed to curb crime. And what the students do is they look at these scenarios and they apply the grade policy analysis tool to each scenario. And what they do is they look at the scenario and then they evaluate the policy. What is the goal of the policy? Its rivals and supporters, advantages, disadvantages, and finally, whether that policy was an effective way to address that particular problem, issue, or need. And finally, we have policy making in the 3 branches of government. And what we use here, we use the case study, the Chicago Gang Ordinance, which is an example of the 3 branches of government interacting in terms of first drafting a policy, enforcing a policy, and ultimately having to rescind the policy because of constitutional issues. And that's what that lesson looks like. Once again, the same format. And the students, once again, look at the policy, the applied grade once again to troubleshoot the policy. And we also have a civil conversation version of the same lesson that Sarah will tell you about.
The alternative for this option B of the civil conversation, Gregorio mentioned that the students can either look at the circumstances surrounding what ended up in the Supreme Court case of Chicago v. Morales as a policy analysis, or they can explore it in a civil conversation, which is basically a very structured but student-centered discussion strategy that has kids sort of dig deeply into a text that presents a number of perspectives on an issue. They do some analysis, some note taking rather, some analysis on their own in the step 2 that you see in the guide. They think about some questions that they might like to talk about for the issue. And only after they've done all of that preparation do they come together in a small group with some really simple guidelines to have a conversation about the issue. It's not a debate. It's not a Socratic seminar. It's just a conversation to sort of see, where do they find common ground? Where do they disagree? And then the kids have some chance to reflect at the end a little bit on sort of their own participation and how things went in the conversation. And the role of the teacher in that activity is really just as a person on the side, making sure the groups are staying on topic. It's something that we've gotten great feedback from teachers about, and is a great way for kids to really dig into an issue and think about it deeply, first on their own and then with their classmates.
Thank you, Sarah. And now back to the dashboard. Another resource that's very helpful is we have these project planners, these that help students document every step of the process, which is also an easy way, a convenient way for you to monitor their progress as they're developing their CAP project. There are 4 different planners. The first one is a proposal where they let you know what they're going to work on, why they think it's important. The Thinking It Through planner, which is another series of prompts that lets them maybe shift gears in terms of maybe the primary cause or effect that they initially started to think about based on their research, their initial research. And then we have the Civic Action Planners, with once again a series of prompts that allow students to document what they've done and how that's going to inform their next civic action. And finally, the project report, where the students reflect on their civic experience and share what it is that they learned. Another important feature is the toolkit. We were very sensitive to not turning the teachers into project coordinators. So when students ask, what should we do next? We have an inventory of discrete civic actions that they can apply to develop their CAP project. So when the students ask what to do next, you simply refer them to the CAP toolkit. And if they want to create a PSA, for instance, we have a simple tip sheet on some of the steps or things that they should consider as they develop their own PSA. So as you can see, there's a variety of choices, variety of civic actions. So this is where you take the students, this is what they wanted, if they ask you what they should do next in terms of civic actions. Finally, we always think it's helpful for students to see examples of previous civic actions, projects apps, actually. So we have plenty of examples of previous student projects that students can look at, and maybe on an issue that they've decided that they want to also address. And we also have a assessment and culminating activities.
As Gregorio mentioned, we have those 5 main classroom lessons. We have those 4 planners that lead the students through their project. And it's really important at the end to end the project with a culmination to showcase student learning. So the culminating activity really allows an opportunity for teachers to assess students. Not exactly we're not assessing whether or not they actually, solved homelessness, but really, did they know who to contact, how to contact, when to contact, all of those things that effective citizens do in the real world. And also giving them opportunity did they reflect on their actual learning, right? And do they now have the tools to be effective citizens? So the presentation piece, it can be something that's classroom classroom-based. We've seen it where it's school-based, where teachers will do a sort of a civics fair and invited community members into the school. We've had it where CAP is a requirement in some schools for 12th graders, and then they'll have the 11th graders come and watch the different presentations and ask questions so that they're prepared when they actually do a civic action project the following year. And then we've also seen community-based culmination activities. We do actually host a CAP Expo here in California, but we also do an online expo nationally for students from around the country to showcase their civic action projects. And as far as what the product might actually be, we've seen it, up to what the teacher would like to do. So we've had things like PowerPoints, websites, videos, sometimes essays. So just a variety of different ways that students can showcase their actual civic learning. Back to the PowerPoint, and Sarah's going to chat with you a little bit about how Civic Action Project can help your students earn possibly a state seal, depending on what state you're in, maybe satisfy a service learning requirement or a capstone project.
Thanks. So I noticed Michelle, I think, is here from Massachusetts, which is one of many states which in the last few years has added either new civics requirements like they have in Massachusetts, or in some states like California, states are offering a state civic seal, which is a sort of optional like enhancement that students can earn on their diploma to demonstrate, to show that they've shown a commitment to becoming civically engaged. So many of those, either the state civic seals or those state project requirements, CAP works beautifully for all of those. For any of them that require hands-on civic engagement, CAP is ready to go for any of those kinds of projects. And just to emphasize again that we do have a middle school version, because I know in some states the requirements are that the projects happen in middle school or in 8th grade. But basically, as you've seen, sort of CAP takes kids through all of the steps of doing a project and documenting it in a way that many states require, whether it's through a portfolio or some kind of public presentation like Laura shared with you about. Of course, it's worth double checking with your administrators and your state to make sure that CAP does meet the precise requirements in your state, but based on our survey of the states where these seals and requirements are being implemented, it should set you and your students up really easily to get this done. Right now on our website, we do have dedicated websites for teachers in California and one for teachers in New York State, where you can find a more detailed explanation of all of the Constitutional Rights Foundation resources, not just CAP, that can help you and your students work towards their earning the Civic Seal.
Thank you, Sarah. So we are coming on to 4:30, at least Pacific time here, 7:30 Eastern. So just quickly about next steps. I'm going to post in the, I'm posting in the chat a place if you want to register. Again, Civic Action Project is completely free and we're available. You can see on the website under contact us. You can contact Sarah, myself, Gregorio. We're happy to chat with you, happy to do a presentation for your social studies folks at your school, whatever you like, but we're happy to support you in the process. We ask that you just register, obviously, on the CAP website. If you're going to have your students work with CAP, that you could submit a class roster and they can, participate in the discussion board, some other things that we offer on the CAP website. And then also stay in touch, let us know how it's going. We always love to feature students and teachers on social media and on our website. We do also have a contest. So it's open until May of every year. So if you have students who are working on civic action projects and they like to submit their work on our national website, we'd love to hopefully be able to feature one of your students. So that's it for our webinar. Thank you so much for attending. We are going to stay after because we do know that some people had some questions. So one of the first questions Michelle asked is pacing. How much time between lessons are the planners concurrent to or following lessons? We'll answer that first, and we'll answer a second question is if you have recommendation for group versus individual projects. So I can answer, and then everyone can chime in here. Pacing. So really the way it's set up is that we don't really introduce the proposal piece until about the third lesson. So there's some discretion in that, but they really need to have those first 3 lessons kind of under their belt before they can actually start tackling their proposal. And Gregorio, did you want to add to that?
Well, just in terms of when they start doing the proposals, I like to give students at least a week to fill out what they're going to do, then maybe a week to actually go and complete their civic action. Some teachers accelerate that a little more. That's fine. Maybe they've already got the students already engaged and they've already got in a rhythm, but that's usually for starting out. The first 3 lessons, you can pretty much do those even in the first week. I've seen teachers do actually the first 5 lessons in the first week, but it's really when the students start actually completing the planners, that's when you want to slow down a little and give students a chance to actually complete the civic actions, a chance to reflect, document it, and then convene once again and decide what they're going to do next. So I would say anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. If you do it like really with fidelity, you can actually get students to complete a really good civic action project. And once again, it's really helpful if you give them something to work towards. We always urge them to create a media product of some kind. It could be a PowerPoint. It could be some students create websites. Some students do other things creative. Just some sort of record of what they did that another group of students can look at and maybe pick up from where they left off, especially if it's a chronic issue in their community.
And just to add to that, we do sometimes have teachers who will front load a couple of the lessons and then start having CAP Fridays or once a week where they're actually meeting in their groups and kind of using those planners to move their projects forward. And the second question you had about recommendation for group versus individual projects, we recommend this to be a small group project, around 3 to 4 students per group. However, we've seen where teachers have had only one student who's really passionate about a particular issue and no other student really cares about whatever that issue might be, and so they allow that student to work on their own. But really we find a lot of value in that collaboration piece of CAP and students being able to work together, because those are some of the skills that they're going to need both for college career and civic life later on.
I can take this one. Meg's asking about differentiating for different kinds of learners. And I think one of the best things that we have, Meg, for that, when we talked before about the planners, we showed you very quickly what they look like, but we also have sort of a streamlined version of those planners that I think would be really accessible for kids of different levels, depending on their reading level and whatever other things you're trying to accommodate. We also have, Gregorio, correct me if I'm wrong, we had in the works Spanish language versions of the planners as well. So if that's something that would be helpful, depending on the kind of differentiation that you're looking for, let us know, and we can get those to you for your students. I think otherwise the differentiation that can happen, not knowing exactly what kind of students you're working with, I think the pacing can be flexible, right? So depending on your kids, you may want to slow things down or speed things up. And Gregorio, I know you've worked with groups in some really different settings as well. If you want to add.
Well, I kind of, first of all, let students know they're not expected to solve anything. That kind of liberates them into being a little more adventurous in terms of the civic actions that they're going to do. They're not second guessing themselves. And once again, it's really important to give them sort of an end outcome. Sometimes that outcome could just be completing every one of the planners, and that becomes a record of their civic experience. As I always tell them, if it's not written down, it's almost as if it never happened. So at least document your experience. Students really respond to being the opportunity to create some sort of media product if that's something that the teachers will help support. And in some cases, students already have a video class or some sort of a media production class in high school that they can actually tap into that resource to get creative with the experience.
And then Ashley asked how many people in a group, and usually we recommend 3 to 4. I think it's a little unwieldy if you get more than that, and then you're not sure everyone's doing, participating in the particular project. So we recommend 3 to 4 students.
But if you have 10 students or 12 students
Yeah.
that want to do one issue, you can break them up into 3 groups, and they can convene every week to sort of give each other an update. What did you find out? How can we help each other? They can still be working on the same issue.
All right, so I don't see any other questions in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll hang out here for another minute, but again, thank you all for giving up part of your day to be with us, and we look forward to supporting you throughout the year.